journey from the backbench to the front bench. And as they say, wife is always right. So here is my topic. That is what I selected. And that's what I'll talk to you about. And as I talk, I hope that this will make a lot more sense. So as I go through this, I hope that you remember that each of you will have your own pathway. The what is not that important for your career. What I mean by that is what I did after BPharm, or what I did after my PhD, or what I did do after my first job. These are things that are essentially good to know, but it may not help you a whole lot, because in your conditions, your circumstance, your goals may be either a lot different or at least somewhat different than mine. What I hope that you take away from this is really the how, essentially how to get things done in a complex organization. Say for example, how to keep yourself focused on doing the job when you have 10,000 different things around you. How to grow your team. And you can use this probably as a framework for your work. So you've already gone over some of my background. So I did my BPharm. I was there at DY Patil from 2004 to 2008. I had a great time there. I made great friends. And I'll be honest, I wasn't a very bright student back then. I would always sit on the back benches, hoping that I would not be asked any questions. That was for a few reasons. One, I just wanted to have fun. Two, I had, and I still do have, a speech impediment, stuttering. So I was scared, really, to speak in front of the class. I learned, but like, even though I wasn't the brightest student then, I still learned a lot during my around 4 years there. What I learned a lot is how to live away from my home and to be on my own. I learned to make friends. I learned to read a lot during that time, be it either non-fiction books or novels or whatever. And I just like to write about it, and write either about the current topics and things like that. And as I look back, these were perhaps one of the most important life sort of qualities and lessons that I learned in my 4 years at DY Patil. And also, I found my soulmate. Mona there. So that was all worth it. I think towards the end of my BPharm, I was really focused on coming to US. So I was working pretty hard to get through my TOEFL and the GRE and all of those things. So I got admitted to the University of Southern California in Los Angeles to do my MS in pharmaceutical sciences. So like, here is where life really hit me, and it propelled me to work hard and to really do something to make my life sort of meaningful. I started in a lab with a professor that was extremely difficult to work with, because he was an expert in the field. And I really didn't know much about lab equipment, let alone research. He was very harsh to me most of the times. But in that hard time, I learned two important things. One was the HPLC technique. For those of you that may not know it, it is just a lab technique. Um, and the other was work with someone that may not like you, but still find a way to keep working in getting things done. Um, One particular incident that hit me hard during my first few months in US was during a class presentation. My speech problem then was so bad, I could not say a word for several minutes during that presentation, and I just blocked completely. After that, I knew I had to fight back, and I was very determined to at least take some control of my speech and to make up for that sort of a shortcoming with more hard work and more focus. And just within 4 years after that, I completed 2 master's degree, 1 PhD from the same school. It was pretty difficult to manage doing the classes for my MS while doing the lab work for PhD. But what helped me during that time was really focusing on time efficiency and really making sure that I'm using my time to the very last second. I would do my coursework in between doing sort of a lab, in between a lab experiment. I would just talk to my friends and my parents only when I was going either from lab to school or back, just to make like good use of time. I cut down on time to go out, have fun. I even brought groceries for the whole month or more. I would just buy in bulk so that I would not have to waste time going back and forth. And most importantly, I forced myself to sit in the front bench in classes. So I would force myself to stay focused and to ask and to answer any questions that came about. During this time, I also had several projects that I got to work on. It was because of one technique that I knew, which was the HPLC technique. Remember the technique that I just told you about from my previous lab. With this, I was on several research projects, got several publications, some as co-authors, some as a first author. But these publications essentially then helped me to get my first job as a toxicologist after school. I then, once I was done with the toxicology role, which was about a year and a half or so, I then moved into a role that was more focused on medical writing at Cato Research, which involved working on different types of drugs and to essentially to learn about writing different types of documents, such as a clinical protocol, such as a clinical trial report. Once I worked there for about a year and a half, then I moved to MEDTRONIC. I worked very hard at MEDTRONIC. Days and nights, took on more and more job responsibilities. Then soon after was promoted to at least to manage a part of that group. And then soon after that was again promoted to essentially essentially to lead the whole group of scientific communications. In that time, I focused on two things really. During all of these, I would say about 4 or 5 years that I've been with MEDTRONIC. It was the quality of the work that I did, and it was the timeliness of the work that I did. In my initial career, in the first 3 to 4 years, or first maybe around 5 years or so of my career, I think the one thing that really helped me was being focused on work hard, to work harder and as smart as I could, and to challenge myself each day to do a bit better. So, that is a bit about my background. About MEDTRONIC, there is a lot to talk about. It would probably take an whole hour, but I'll just keep it short, which is essentially, we are a huge company. We affect almost 120 patients every patients every second are being either treated by the device or being affected by the device that we may in some way or the other. So it has a huge impact. The group that I work in is focused on the treatment of stroke. There are different types of stroke. I don't have the time to go over it, but essentially, my work is focused on the treatment of stroke. I'll probably go into this a little bit more because this is more relevant. So this is about my team in scientific communications, which involves a lot of cross collaboration with several groups such as R&D, quality, regulatory, clinical safety, then your marketing. You can come in from different backgrounds from a B pharmacy, and you can go into either of these groups. A sort of a B Pharm degree or an M Pharm degree, or a degree that is related to these, gives you the essential, the background or the backbone that you need to be able to then build on to do these types of roles. My team that I have currently, they come in from different backgrounds. They range all the way from, some are in neuroscience to genetics, to some even being in stem cell research. Again, the key quality that at least I look for my group is being able to understand science, and that could be any science. You don't have to have the experience in one particular field, but just being able to understand science, understand publications, being able to read through publications quickly, being able to get the core message out of it quickly is the key things. And then, of course, being able to write about it. Here are again some of the types of documents that we work on. Clinical protocols. Again, we don't have to go into each of these. The key thing is that the background that you need is essentially being able to understand science at a more broader level, and then be able to write, be able to talk about it. There is a lot to talk about, and you can get lost in it. So I tried to put some key takeaways that at least I've learned in my few years of experience that I've had. Especially as you are in your early career, you wanna focus on your work. worst thing that you can do early on in your career is get into the politics of office or get into the politics at your workplace and keep planting that, what is my move after this. I highly, highly, highly recommend you just focus on your work, keep your head down and let your work do the talking. Even if you don't get even if you don't get even if you don't get seen for your work for the first few times, that's okay. Keep working and you will get noticed if your work is good enough. Um, then second is, don't be limited to your job description. Uh, Expand your responsibilities, and whenever there is chance, take up new projects, take up things that may not be directly in your job description. Don't be limited, well, this is not in my job description, so I don't want to do this. At the same time, of course, be cognizant that you're not doing this too much. You're not getting in the way of someone else's job or someone else's role, or that can go pretty badly. Again, like the key messages here is find the right opportunity and keep looking. Be hungry to learn more and more each day. The last, probably the most important, your attitude, not your aptitude determines your altitude. This has been said so many times by so many great thinkers, and I cannot emphasize that enough, especially if you're trying to build your career. Most companies will not hire people that cannot work with others. Or if you do get hired, and if you're not able to work with others, you will get fired. That I can assure you. Unless you are in a field that is very, very, very specific to only something that you know, guess what? You have to work with others. You have to learn to work with others. So take that pride out and learn to work with others. Then as you start to grow more, become more senior, probably around the 4 or 5 year mark, probably want to learn to train others, to mentor others, to at least groom one person in your team that can take on your role. That is the only way that you can move to the next level, to your next role. If you don't have someone to take over your role, then you can't move over to the next role. Focus on hiring the right talent. I cannot emphasize this enough. You will create a mess in your team if you don't hire the right people. So at least for me, I spend a lot of time to make sure that we're hiring the right person in the team. And it is not just that person has to be fully qualified. Yes, they have to be, but also to make sure that they really fit well in the team. And the last point is, don't micromanage. Once you hire the right talent, give them the resources such as the procedures, the templates, the trainings that they need. The worst thing you can do is to hire really smart people and then tell them each step of the way what they should do. Be accessible to them, but don't get into their way of doing things. As you take on more and more responsibilities, you will not be able to know all of these specific details, all of my details. And so you will not, in a lot of cases, you will not be the best person to make a decision because you may not have the whole picture. So just focus on the big decisions and try to, so again, these are some of my key takeaways. The most important thing is be grateful to everyone around you, your support network, your friends, your family. I am extremely grateful to my wife, Mona, to my mom, who have helped me all through the tough times, and really having at least a few people around whom you can really rely on to get you through those tough times, because each of us goes through that. So I'll stop there. I've spoken more than I wanted to. So I'll take a pause here, and I really hope to hear your questions. Don't be afraid to ask any questions. You know, if you have a question, ask it. You can also use the chat feature, and I can just go through your questions there as well. So I'll take a pause here, and I would love to hear from you.
Thank you, sir. Now the session is open for questions. Students, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Either I was super clear, or I was not clear at all, because that is the only reason why I would have no questions whatsoever. If you don't feel comfortable to ask, you can also use the type. I see a few questions.
Yes, we have few questions in chat box. The first question is, what qualities we should find to choose the right talent?
What qualities? So, you know, of course, having the technical qualifications for that role, that is will depend on the type of role that you're applying for. In my team, I would always want to see someone that is able to read publications, to be able to understand data, to be able to analyze data, to be able to ask those questions, what really makes sense around data. Those would be some of my most basic qualifications, being able to then to be able to write about it. And then more importantly, someone that can essentially work with the team, won't have a big ego that would essentially stand in their way of them being able to do things, and be able to coach others as they start to learn more. So those are some of the key qualities that, you know, I would look for. Again, the technical qualities will probably be different for the type of role that you're applying for, but the other qualities of being able to work in a team, being able to essentially change your goals as the goals of the group that you're working in, as the goals of the organization that you're working in, as they change, you have to be able to you know, change your goals, because your success depends upon the whole group's success. So being very flexible, especially in your initial part of your career, are some of the key, I think, key qualities that I was looking for.
Thank you, sir. We have next question, and I guess I have the same question. How you manage to recognize that you need to do double masters or PhD? Or I can say, how you will say you got benefited with the dual masters?
Yeah. So again, like when I came to the US, I came in only for my first master's, MS in Alumni. During that time, I didn't know much about sort of the laws that go into it, the regulatory processes that a drug or a device has to go through, which is pretty complex, in US, in India, in Japan, in EU, in China. Each of these major players have sort of different rules. So having the background or knowing the sort of the framework as to where you can find the answers, at least, that was, as I started to learn more, was a key thing that I wanted to know about. So which is why I started to do my dual masters. And that was after I had completed my first master's. So I completed my first master's in 2010. And then I started my PhD around that time in 2010 itself. And then my second master's I started at the start of 2011. Just as I started to get to know more that to learn about these sort of basics, it is going to be very important for me to get sort of a full picture. Yes, you can be in the lab and know about a particular protein. You can know about its pathway. You can know that very well. But unless you know unless you know what type of trials you need to do to get that drug into the market, unless you know what kind of data that you need to collect, how do you need to gather that data? How do you need to write about that data? Um, uh, you won't go too far. So just with that in mind is why I had decided to I had decided to go and do a lab.
So basically, I can say from lab to market, you wanted to go. So
Yes.
you did your dual master.
Bench to bedside.
Yes, correct. Yeah. Thank. So we have next question. What are the specific skills you need for a pharmacology PhD?
For a pharmacology student to apply for a PhD, I don't think you need any specific skills other than the true desire to be in research. At the end of the day, at least for me, the way that I look at it, my journey for PhD taught me three questions. Find a problem, find a way to solve that problem, and then to write about how you actually solve that problem. That was all my PhD was all about. If really, you find a topic that you want to do work on, that you want to do research on, then you find a way how to actually solve it, and then you actually write about it. So these skills that you would need is essentially having the real desire to be in research, to be in lab, because it is hard. It is because almost 95% of your research does not work. It is only that 5% that makes that huge difference. And as you start to do more and more lab work, you'll find out that the assumptions that you had initially started with were almost completely wrong. So having that sort of a mindset that you really want to be in research, that you can take that essentially failure after failure after failure, and then still be able to pass through this, have that essentially desire to find those answers is the real skill that you need to have.
Thank you, sir. Next question we have is, will foreign language help for more opportunities in professional jobs?
Yes, there is no doubt about it. All organizations are going global. And as they go more global, learning more languages on a day-to-day basis, I work with colleagues almost all over the world, and I have to have team members with me that know that language, so that they can then essentially talk to them and translate for me. So essentially knowing that and having at least a few languages, It will help you in your job. And in general, it will open up your ability to think also. So it is always, always great if you can take the time and be able to learn more rather than more languages, especially if you had to choose. Um, Probably Cantonese is one of the languages that I would recommend. Almost all global businesses now have to do at least some or the other work in China. So having that background is going to be helpful. Um, Knowing even Spanish might be also quite helpful. So yes, it would be helpful, and probably you have to choose which of the languages that you can actually learn.
Yes, so we'll go ahead with a few more questions.
Mm-hmm.
Is it necessary to do MS before PhD if I aim to do PhD in foreign countries?
No, it is not. You can directly apply for PhD after you complete your B.Pharm as well. There is no there are certain prerequisite courses that you may have to take as part of it. It really depends on the school itself and the type of program that you are trying to get into. But for most schools, it is not a prerequisite. Although it is definitely harder to get into a PhD directly after your E-Pharma.
So did you got any scholarship for doing masters in California?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So when I did my first masters, I had to pay out of pocket. There was no scholarship. I did get paid as part of working in a lab, but for my second MS that I did, that was fully paid by the school. So I did get a scholarship to my school itself, and the same even for the PhD as well.
Will you share with us the transition phase from learning skills to applying the qualities for being an expert in the field?
Let me get that question right. So say that again.
Uh, just a minute, sir.
Yeah, let me maybe also read it in the chat.
Yeah. Will you share transition phase from learning skills to applying the qualities?
Yeah, I see. So there is, I mean, the transition phase, really, there is no formal sort of a transition phase. You learn as you go along. To work in a school environment, to work at an institute is much different than working at a company, for sure. But getting some exposure, working in a home company for like 3 months through an interview, through like an internship, through any sort of a program that you can get into, just work there for 3-4 months to get at least some exposure would be helpful. But you essentially learn about it as you go along. There is no formal transition that at least I can think of. Again, like in terms of the qualities, really be flexible with your approach, especially when you start new in a company. Be ready to essentially keep your head down and to focus on the job at hand. And don't start going into a new environment and start to tell them to do things all over differently. That may not go very well. Again, once you have that experience, then that you can start to do that. But especially when you are new, these are probably some of the things that you may want to focus on as you transition from school to working. And then I think your question also said to applying the qualities being an expert in the field. You know, I am not an expert in my field. First of all, there are far more people that know a lot more than me, but to keeping the attitude to learn every day, find something online. There are so many online courses that you can do continuously. There is so much stuff that you can go through, and having that process, keeping at least a few hours in a week to read about topics. Uh, think about it as this is your trade. This is what you are good at. And you can be good at it for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. If you don't keep on working at it, you will lose that edge. Like someone in a trade, if you are someone that works with knives or with swords, you have to constantly keep on making sure that they are really, really thin, razor sharp. You cannot just rely on what you did a few months back. So having the attitude that this is a continuous process of learning. There is no such state as being an expert in the field. That is just in that particular moment. The very next day, if you are not focused on trying to learn new things, you will slowly start to essentially lose that edge.
Sir, some students wants to know about the career opportunities for regulatory affairs.
Yeah, regulatory affairs has a lot of career opportunities. A lot of companies, the devices, and in drugs, biologics as well, have now whole departments that hire these folks that have that sort of training. And essentially, you don't need to know a lot about regulatory affairs other than knowing the background, knowing the tools where you need to go to find the information. When I did my master's in regulatory affairs, I took like maybe around uh, 12 to 14 courses, and each of those courses had like binders this thick. I do not remember most of that stuff. I am just being honest, and I can assure you that no one from the class. But what that process of 2 years does is it teaches you to to know where you need to look for resources, where you go to find out that if you have this new drug, that how do you apply for it? What is it that you need for it? So there are several areas in RA, in regulatory affairs, that you can go in, and having a background as either as a B Pharm or an M Pharm or as a PhD gives you a good start to that.
So in connection of the same, is it necessary to do a specialized course of RA after a master's or a bachelor's degree to have a job opportunity in RA?
It would definitely be helpful. It would definitely, and there are a lot of courses now online. There are several schools that do offer these courses that have maybe like 5 courses, 6 courses. Some of them have even just like 3 courses or so, wherein you can do like a short course with them. I think it would definitely be helpful now, especially since the field is so, there are so many individuals in it, that if you don't have at least some training, some sort of a coursework in it, that it would be hard for you to get into that field without any sort of a coursework on it.
So does M.Pharm in India is equivalent to MS in USA?
Yeah, it is. It is on the same. I would say it is on the same level. Again, the the course requirements, um, the types of training that you need to go through, they differ from school to school in US as well. So there is no one fits all answer here. It would, but for most part, after doing an M.Pharm, you would probably have most of the prerequisite courses for an MS in the US. Yeah.
Do we get 100% scholarship while pursuing PhD or any
It
assistance?
depends. It is not there always. No, it does not come as a given that just because you're doing a PhD that you will get full scholarship. Um, most of the schools, most of at least the well-known schools, the top 20 or so, they usually take most of their students only if they have the funds to support them. So most likely, if you're going to one of the top schools, and if you do get admitted there, that you will have full scholarship. You do need to work either as a either to teach a few courses uh, to graduate students, so you have to work almost like around 20 hours or so, or if your lab that you are working in has enough funds, then you can just work in the lab itself. Uh, but but again, like to essentially to answer your first question, to answer your first question, it is not a for sure given that if you do get into a PhD that you will that it will be painful.
Yes. So next question we have from a B.Pharm student that can you please elaborate on medical writing as a career and what made you interested in the field?
Yes, so medical writing as a career, it is starting to become a lot more of a formal field. It really wasn't a formal job. I don't think even like maybe around 10 years or so back. I mean, I didn't know about it when I started or when I had finished my beef farm that I can go into this as like a career. But more and more companies have now uh, have now really started to make this as a formal group and as a formal job that you find in most drug companies, most of the lights companies as well, because there is a huge amount of data that they process, and in a sense, as your role as a medical writer, some of the things that you have to do is be able to write about data. So essentially, you do a new trial, then be able to talk about that trial, be able to write a whole report on it as to how it was done, what were some of the key endpoints, what were the results, how does it look in the overall picture, then being able to essentially to analyze the data as well. So as you get data, then being able to take a look at it and say, like when you just look at the table A and B, it looks like this drug is not working as well. But if you were to break this table down A into more subdivisions, if you were to create 3 groups, you find that in group C, it may work very, very well. So having that sort of a mindset to constantly think about data is quite helpful. So essentially being able to understand science very well and being able to write about it in a simple, concise manner that has a flow to it. Like to write can be extremely hard for a lot of people because you can talk about it, and then when you have to write about it, you can sit in front of your laptop or your computer for hours and you may write just like 1 or 2 lines. It is just something that is hard in its essence. So it takes your soul almost to write well. It takes that sort of a mindset to be able to go from one thought, to be able to go from a thought that is very complex and then to like break it down further, break it down further, and have that flow as you write about it, so that when I read it, if I don't know anything about this topic, I'm still able to make some sort of sense from it. So there was probably a long answer to your question, but if I didn't answer your question, please let me know.
I guess yes, sir. You have answered it. So next question is, what mindset of students will boost them to come from backbench to front bench, to move them actually from backbench to front bench?
What says
What, what? Yes, sir.
I didn't quite get
Yeah,
the
what mindset of students will boost them to move from backbench to front bench? So
what
what
mindset
what things will boost them?
will boost you to come. You know, I don't have an answer for that. It has to come intrinsically. You cannot force this. And I'm really being very honest in what I'm saying, that you cannot force something like this. There has to be a spark that the student has to feel. There has to be that will to know about something more, to ask the questions and really be focused. You can force them to sit on the front bench, yes, but that itself is not going to help. You can be on the front bench and be lost. You may be thinking about that match that you have to play, or where you have to go next after this. So again, just that is not going to help. It is just that your own drive. And each person has their own spark, or there are things that some people may find it very interesting and they want to learn about it more, whereas others may not. So I at least I don't think I know that answer, unless like you can make the topic so interesting that people want to know about it, right? So if you are talking about, say, for example, let's just say hydrolysis, okay? If you give me a lot of the theory about hydrolysis, if I am there, I may not fully really connect with it. But if I hear something that is very simplified and I see it actually in front of me work, that may make me come to the front bench and really see it and really try to be engrossed and try to ask the questions. what is the process, what is really happening, and really start to see it in my mind that this is not just theory, this is not just some concept that is there abstract, this is real and this is actually happening. So to get that feel for things, that you're on a planet called as Earth, the planet is constantly moving around itself while it is moving around the sun. Those are things that, you know, you get it once you really have the passion, or either you get presented the information in a way that is very simplified.
But basically, it depends upon the individual focus and determination. So to
Right,
how
right, right, right.
we have next question. What are the different types of business opportunities in pharma field rather than medical retailer or wholesaler?
Oh, I mean, the business opportunities are a lot. You can start your own company to make a new drug. You can work with hospitals to look at ways to either cut down their cost or to look at their processes, and to see where essentially you can help them to drive those costs down. Um, you can work to make a sort of a program or a software that could help to predict if a drug may work or not. You can yeah, I mean again, like, there are so many possibilities that you can go into the business to hit it. But again, even in business, getting to a form that is really really simplified, and really having that core understanding of the concepts is going to be important.
Thank you, sir. Any more questions from participants, students?
I saw one hand up. There was someone that raised their hand. I don't know who it was.
I don't think so, sir. Yeah. We have one more question from a student. Does the area, whether it's an urban or rural area, college, affect the career in pharmacy?
No, no, I don't. Again, I don't like. It is your attitude, not your aptitude, that always determines your altitude. You may have a hard time. You may have probably a harder time, to be fairly honest, to get to a place where you want to be. But essentially, once you're there, you'll have a much easier time trying to sail through those hard waters, because you know how to do it. So for this course, for your career and for life in general, I don't think that your opportunities are going to be less just because you come from a place that may not be as well known as others. You know, and again, if you look at how the hiring happens, uh, just in your early career, probably the first maybe 3 to 5 years or so, is where your school really matters, where, like, what school did you go to really matters. After that, it's really what type of experiences you've had and how you've learned from it is what helps you get those roles. So I mean, make no mistake about this, that where you come from, what background you had, um, is not going to be a factor that should hold you back, other than you yourself.
Thank you, sir. Any more questions from participants? If you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. I guess, sir, you have answered many of the queries and many questions of the students. If there are any questions, students, you can unmute yourself or post it in chat box.
Come on, guys. One question. Someone should raise their hand. I'm trying to be as friendly as possible. So I hope I haven't like scared anyone. So please feel free to ask like any question that comes to mind.
Sir, I have one question.
Sure.
Sir, you said that aptitude is not that much important for us, but aptitude test will be there every interview. Why?
Yes. Again, don't get me. I should probably rephrase that a little bit. Your aptitude is going to be important. There is no doubt. There is no doubt about it. That is almost as your baseline to get into a role, to get into a job, to get into school. You will most likely need to meet that bar, but that bar is something that everyone in that organization, everyone in that school has met, right? So that is not something that it is very unique to you. What will be unique to you is going to be your attitude, how you take things, how you handle things when it is pretty hard to do things, and how you respond in stress. Those are the things, again, those are the things that will make you stand out, right?
Yes, sir.
Does that answer your question? I didn't get your full name, Vish. Is it Vish?
Vaishnavi.
Kulkarni.
Vaishnavi, yeah.
Yes.
So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Any other questions from the students? Going once, going twice. I'm gone. Okay, I guess no more
Yeah,
questions.
yes, no more questions, sir. So I'd like to conclude the session.
Seychelles, can I just?
Yes, sure, ma'am.
Yes, yes, Harsh, this is Dr. Vaishali from Pharmacology Department.
Wow.
As the head of the department, I just wanted to ask the question on behalf of my PG students, because now they are in their pharmacology field. So what are the opportunities in the preclinical work if they wish to do? Because many students are interested in basic research and some work in vivo or in micro. So like say in laboratory.
So again, like for preclinical, mostly they get into jobs that are related to the function that comes under the R&D group. R&D group in all companies will have a pretty big team that works on just the preclinical aspect. You take drugs, you take devices, most of the work that happens preclinical. So say, for example, for a drug, you may have 10 trials, you may have 10 clinical trials to get approval. You will likely have about 40 to 50 preclinical studies that will support those clinical trials. So in almost every medical device, every pharma, every biopharma company, there is always going to be a pretty large group that comes typically under the R&D group that will hire to work on preclinical studies. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Harsh. So continuing that question, what basic skill sets they should focus on, the students should focus on, so that yeah.
So like for our R&D, and again, like I I haven't had a whole lot of experience to like work in an R&D group in a company. But again, like from what I see, and I have so many colleagues there, it is a lot like what you do during your PhD or during your any sort of work that you're doing as part of your MPharm also. Um, which is have that mindset around research, have that mindset to ask questions, to be able to see things as they're going wrong. Preclinical is a very important aspect of any company. Most companies want to make sure that they identify any issues that there may be with drug or with device in the preclinical stage, because the cost from preclinical to clinical go 10 times higher or more. So they want to make sure that in fact most drugs, most devices fail in the preclinical stage. So you need to have that sort of mindset or skill set to really be sort of qualitative and in your approach to ask the questions, what can go wrong with this drug? What can go wrong with this device? And to answer all of those possibilities before it goes into a clinical trial. Because A, the cost aspect is there, plus it is going into real patients, real humans. So the harm that you can cause there, that is immense. So having that sort of a mindset wherein you think about a problem, fully and holistically, and not just know your conclusions even before you started that, this drug is great and then it works. That should not be the mindset. The mindset should really be, what can go wrong here?